So hello, my name is Giselle. I'm Sterling Brown's great-granddaughter, but I'm also currently a junior, a rising senior at Princeton University. I major in the Department of African American Studies with minors in French and dance. And this past year, I had the opportunity to work with Professor Eddie Glaude on my junior paper, which is a year-long research capstone project, really kind of answering questions that I've had about my great-grandfather for as long as I can remember, and approach them from a scholarly manner. So I began my research at the point of entry in my queries, so in my family archive. As many people know, our family donated the majority of Sterling Brown's papers to Williams College in 2019, following my grandmother's death. Prior to Williams, they were held at Howard's Moreland Springer Library, but they were transferred to Williams, which was Sterling's alma mater, where he graduated in 1922. What remains in our personal family archive are many of Sterling's personal items. So these are things addressed to the family, things he addressed to the younger generations of our family directly, and things that are kind of more personal to us. So beginning here, I identified my secondary sources, and those really began to be revealed to me through the 1998 Callaloo Literary Journal Sterling A. Brown Tribute Edition, and also the 1982 Sterling A. Brown Tribute, as kind of the pinnacle of this archive that I've been looking into. So alongside those, I've been looking at Sterling's papers and books, those with notes in the margins, where his words have been guiding my direction and highlighting key points in this scholarly oeuvre. The ensuing work dealt with the tensions between oral history, my family archive, and the existing literature. I sought to make sense of these warring legacies I've understood to inherit, that of Sterling Brown, the family man, where my familial knowledge placed Sterling at the center of African American studies, and Sterling A. Brown, the scholarly figure, the towering Black literary scholar who is both highly revered and unevenly remembered. So I ask a few central questions. I'm gonna do one of these. So first is, what does it mean to inherit the legacy of an individual who was partially displaced, partially misremembered, and partially misread? How did Sterling Brown's aesthetic and pedagogical commitments place him at an angle to dominant narratives of early 20th century Black modernity and contribute to an uneven literary afterlife? And third, what would writing Sterling A. Brown into remembrance mean for the next generation? So my generation, that of Kai and I, who are doing kind of this hands-on groundwork these days. So writing as Sterling Brown's great-granddaughter and the inheritor of both familial reverence and disciplinary marginality, I argued that Sterling Brown's literary project might be understood as an expanded stage of intellectual refusal, and that applying Sterling Brown's staggered commitments and aesthetic ethics, when brought into dialogue with both my writing and the scholarship of my generation, offers a blueprint for more expansive forms of scholarship. Finally, I argue that the conflicting knowledge between my family archive and the disciplinary displacement of my ancestor reveals a strength in Sterling Brown's literary commitment, one that reshapes the stakes of inheritance, memory, and authorial commitments as a whole. So I'm going to go over a little bit of an overview of who Sterling Brown was that many of you might have heard if you were here in the past few days, but if you weren't here, I'll give you an introduction. So Sterling Allen Brown was born on May 1st, 1901 on Howard University's campus. His father, Sterling Nelson Brown, was born enslaved in Tennessee in 1858 and emerged as what they called a true race man of the day. He became a professor of religion at Howard beginning in 1892 and served as a pastor of the Lincoln Temple Congregational Church. Finally, he authored his memoir, My Own Life Story. The elder Sterling, having spent a life in the classroom and in the church, had hoped that his only son would, quote unquote, take up the father's mantle and hear the call of the ministry. And this is a quote by Mark Sanders. However, the younger Sterling preferred the former over the latter, heeding the call of academia rather than that of in the church. So, continuing his parcours, Sterling A. Brown would graduate from the prestigious Dunbar High School in Washington, D.C., which was the nation's first public high school for Black students, as valedictorian in 1919. He would then matriculate to Williams College for his undergraduate years, where he graduated in 1922, and Harvard University for his master's. By 1923, a young Sterling has traversed, quote, the bosom of the elite, from Dunbar to the Ivy League, acquiring exemplary achievements that would make any quote-unquote race man gleam. Nonetheless, his early life was marked by contradictions. How does a Southern black man navigate America's academic bourgeoisie without being left unscathed? How does one exist amongst a white elite, all while the direct living memory of slavery exists tangibly by blood and in his own home? At the same time, as posed by Sterling Stuckey in his 1976 introduction, how then does, quote, a Williams College, Pi Beta Kappa, a Harvard man, a college professor, an eminent writer, have a voice with so much of earth and sky and sunlight and dark clouds about it? A voice unafraid, an instrument blues tinged. For Sterling Brown, black culture and his Southern roots were inextricably linked to who he was. Contradictions in all, his identity in Southern vernacular and a dedication to the working class remained central to his intellectual curiosity and aesthetic ethics, shaping how he lived his life and his career. Thus, following graduation from Harvard, Sterling Brown would begin a quote-unquote peripatetic odyssey as Professor Lawrence P. Jackson in The Indignant Generation, which is over there, which is so cool, says, through the Southern black colleges, beginning at Virginia Seminary in Lynchburg, Virginia, Lincoln College in Missouri, and Fisk University in Nashville, before finally settling at Howard in 1929. Through his travels, he would encounter the central figures of his subsequent literary works, Big Boy, Old Lem, Sister Lou, amongst others. Moreover, he would discover a wealth of rich black cultural life through his students and the folk he encountered along the way, quoting, I learned the arts and sciences at Williams College, and I learned the humanities in Lynchburg, Virginia. While Sterling Brown's criticism spanned from literary review to this form of Brownian portraiture he penned in the South, his cultural argument remained the same. Fidelity to realistic portraits of life as an antidote to the corrosive influence of racist stereotypes. A doctrine of literary realism through its sober representations that, while seemingly simple in its terms, set Brown's work apart. This form of realism, defined again by Professor Jackson as social realism, was the 1930s era Great Depression motivation to portray realistic portraits of American life across class, struggle, and geographical indicators, both as a critique of societal structures and an authentic reimagining of real life. Sterling Brown's work was not apolitical. Brown's portraiture took full charge in his first full-length collection of poetry, which we'll be reading some of his poems from today, Southern Road, which was published in 1932. At the moment of publication, Southern Road marked a drastic shift in the landscape of black literary aesthetics, centering an inquiry into the cultural veracity of the black vernacular South that had not yet been fully explored. While his contemporaries, such as Langston Hughes and Countee Cullen, were concerned with the Renaissance occurring in Harlem, Brown's scholarship was rooted in the urgency of preserving black Southern life. His motivating question being, how true is this work to the lives of the people portrayed, as their real-life counterparts see it? A social realist question at its core. The text received high praise. In his introduction to the first edition, James Weldon Johnson, writing from Fisk University, where Sterling had been a few years prior, describes the work as, quote, a distinctive contribution to American poetry, one that has absorbed the spirit of his material, made it his own, and without diluting its primitive frankness and raciness, truly expressed it with artistry and magnified power. With Southern Road, Sterling Brown unveiled and gave voice to the depth of Negro dialect, not only employing a social realism as a direct representation of Negro life as it is, but by placing African American culture at the center of the social experience, decentering the white gaze, and acting as a refractory principle of freedom within the shaping contours of an ever-evolving received tradition. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to who he was as a teacher, because he wasn't just a poet, a critic, or a scholar. He was also a teacher at Howard for over 40 years. So Brown was a masterful teacher, having articulated in 1980, quote, fundamentally, I'm a teacher. I took teaching seriously. I get the papers back to the people. I read them. My audience has been the classroom. I have reached more critics and writers and intelligent kids more than anybody else, more than Locke. You'll notice some of his sass in some of his quotes. Brown's most tangible influence on black scholarship thus lies in his students, both in the classroom and in the vigilante spaces he created in dorm rooms, hallways, and the basement of his home on Kearney Street. Teaching allowed Brown to influence the great thinkers of the 20th century directly. Amongst them were John Killens, John Hicks, Ossie Davis, and after them, Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka, and Chloe Wooford, Toni Morrison, whose names would then fill libraries, theaters, music halls, and even the African American Studies Department at Princeton, which is Morrison Hall, which is my favorite place in the world. Of particular notice is his political engagement with the early years of the young leaders of the Black arts and Black power movements. In the early 1960s, when students approached Brown to serve as an advisor for the Nonviolent Action Group, NAG, Howard's precursor to the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, Professor Brown eagerly accepted. Despite this existence as a choice that Jennifer Jordan argues, quote, probably horrified his bourgeoisie contemporaries, but hadn't he scandalized them for years by entertaining low-class blues singers at his homes in Northeast DC? Question, end quote. Brown was a deeply engaged advisor and most loving critic of his own students. Brown's often divergent political perspectives, particularly his distrust of the Black Power Return to Africa movement, once stating, "I'm not going back to Africa tomorrow. I'm going to Tipton, Mississippi. They need me here, and a whole lot of Africans don't," placed him at an angle to the fiery young group. Student advocates like Stokely Carmichael, Ossie Davis, and the rest of NAG soon discovered that Brown would encourage their disagreements, having argued with him and loved him anyways. In the 1982 tribute to Sterling Brown, Carmichael, having at this point changed his name to Kwame Ture, addressed Brown as, quote, my great mentor, teacher, comrade in arms, guardian of our people's culture, inspirer of hundreds of thousands, penning a tribute for, quote, the greatest thing I learned from you was determination, and inevitable victory in spite of insurmountable odds. I keeps a getting stronger, I forever will. A testament to the enduring relationship formed between teacher and student, comrade and friend. So, to borrow the words of Cornel West, what do we do with Sterling now? I argue that a renaissance of Sterling Brown, not in the Harlem form of the word, but the renaissance, the rebirth, is critical to our generation. Make no mistake, Brown is known, yes, but primarily by those individuals who would have been his peers. Black academics, students, scholars willing to dig deep enough to find the man who built the names we know more easily. Joshua Myers at Howard, just across the street, aptly questions the positioning of Sterling Brown, asking, what would Brown make of his separation from, quote, our many students? Moreover, amongst their families, amongst musicians, younger poets, writers, artists, his being, quote, lesser known amongst the liars of the Black world. Herein lies the painful paradox of Brown's legacy. That a scholar so foundational to Black life and culture remains a stranger within the communities he wrote to and from. Kimberly Benston echoed this sentiment exactly in 1998. Quote, more than ever, we need to listen to Brother Sterling. Contemporary African-American literature and cultural criticism would do well to closely regard Sterling Brown as theoretician, artist, and teacher capable of making historical and cognitive contradiction the very condition of unified aesthetic, philosophical, and political purpose. Similarly, Myers in 2019, quote, Brown bequeathed to us a way of thinking through what it is that made that project such a dangerous yet necessary undertaking. And it has inspired generations to take up that project of life, Black life. He is our representative thinker. So in conclusion, as I wrote this work, my desk sprawled with the literary archive of Sterling Brown. A treasure, his books, those he was given and those he passed down to us, quote, the family, the legacy. His margins remain restless, marked with notes, inscriptions, words of encouragement. Here, this archive of our own making breathes. I think of where he would be at his desk on the top floor of Howard's Founders Hall, or in the big old rocking chair he had on Kearney Street, reading to my mother as a little girl, or crafting the, quote, lies that would put him into print. What would he make of where we are now? The collective we, the artists and writers, thinkers and scholars who've been shaped by his teaching and who've grown from his words. I return then back to a quote that Darwin Turner made, which was mentioned heavily last night. Quote, all trails led at some point to Sterling Brown. Here at my desk, they still do. Here, through the task of writing, his immanence is visible. So how do we keep him alive beyond fragmentations, family archive, memory, margin? We keep him alive by writing him, by returning Sterling Brown to the communities, classrooms, and cultural life from which he has too often been estranged, by applying the ethos of his unflailing dedication to folk life, to the communities that surround us, and to those we, in this ivory tower too often forget to see. To write Brown into remembrance, then, is to take up that charge, to insist that a sure example of determination and perseverance endure. We write as recovery, remembrance, and responsibility, both for the legacy of one individual and for what heeding this legacy may do for our collective memory. If all trails lead at some point to Sterling Brown, then they do not end here. The work is not finished, it cannot be. But to write of Sterling Brown now is to refuse his disappearance, and then begin again the task of carrying him forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please give another round of applause for Giselle. Amazing. And I'm glad for us all to be here, to be working to rebirth Sterling Allen Brown's legacy, to be writing. We are the writers and the poets in the room, and this is what we're here to do. So thank you so much for that introduction. I know you have some images of Sterling, yes, if you want to show them.
Sure, yeah.
We also have poems of his that we will start reading. Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, so a few of these are from our family archive. A few of these are more general. This is his father, Sterling Nelson Brown, who I mentioned was born enslaved in Tennessee and then emerged to be this really true, what they would call a race man of the time. You know, he was kind of the epitome of the black bourgeoisie, but having emerged from an enslavement truly is just quite incredible, I think. This is a family portrait of the Brown family, and a very young Sterling Brown is up there on the top left. Is that correct? Top left. Thank you, Mother. And you'll see in the center, that is Sterling Nelson Brown, and around him are all his sisters. So he comes from a family of sisters, and that must be a generational thing too, because I also come from a family of only women. So there's just a lot of women out there, which is awesome. This is a more well-known photo. This is Sterling with Duke Ellington, I believe. Yes, at Howard during graduation. This is also a photo that I love. You'll see Margaret Walker, oh my gosh, Langston Hughes. I'm pretty sure there's also Locke. There's a bunch of people. Yeah, Locke is up there. Yeah, Broader Hayden. Yeah, this is a wonderful photo. I mean, just the wealth of Black intellect in this photo is incredible, and I adore. Yes, yeah. Zora, that's who it is. Yeah, I love that. Then this is my favorite. That's my mom, at the house on Kearney Street. And I talk about in my writing that she would sit at his feet as he read to her, and I mean, it's very much true. And this is something you also talked about, how Sterling's students would sit at his feet and listen to him speak. So it wasn't just the students, it was also the family. And then these stories, I've heard these stories my entire life of just how he would, have this massive voice and speak to everyone and just share these incredible lies, as he would call them. And that's all I've got, but thanks. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer questions. We could also move on.
If there are any questions, I'll pass around the mic and we can ask them, whether it's about Sterling Brown, whether it's about Giselle herself and her relationship, whether it's about, the culture of Black intellect at Howard.
I just want to tell you, young sister, you're very powerful. You have the intellectual depth and vocabulary of a great magnitude that I think he deserves from his offsprings. And
thank you.
Yeah, to me, I'm impressed, my sister. I'm seriously impressed, because oftentimes the generational transaction gets lost. In so doing, we start all over again. I think generational transaction is very powerful, and you've grabbed it. From whatever, you've grabbed it, and thank you so much.
Well, I'm very grateful to have been surrounded by mentors, I think, that have kind of allowed me to begin to grab it. Definitely on the road to grabbing it, but, thank you. That means a lot.
So important that we.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a basic question around terminology, really. I was interested, like when you started, you said, one of the things you said, he's misread. I wasn't sure if you meant his work was not read properly and understood properly, or if it was not read enough.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think it's both. Something that I was initially very curious about is how he kind of had this generational gap in publishing poetry. So he published Southern Road, and there was nothing for 40 years. And that was because he had proposed a second manuscript called No Hiding Place, which was later published in 1980 through the Collected Poems, but it was rejected at the time. And I was very curious about why that was rejected, whether it was something more literary, something more political. I'm now kind of satisfied with the understanding that it was a more political kind of rejection, in the sense that the publishers had wanted him to write a novel. He didn't want to write a novel. He wanted to write poetry. He wanted his poetry to be centered in the folk and to be centered in the working class and have this, charge that the rest of his, aesthetic ethic is. But there was kind of a push away from that, and so it was rejected. So that's the first part. And I think the second part is something that I've always contended with is, Sterling really does exist at the center of all of this Black literature that we have, and the scholarship, and everyone, all roads lead back to Sterling Brown, yet many students of my generation don't know who he is, and of other generations, I've often contended with the fact that I want my great-grandfather's legacy to be so prominent, but it's not, and I think that's kind of like a warring that is a matter of the lack of reading, but also kind of this larger landscape and the political of it and all of these things. But I think it's twofold. Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, my sister. I think to me, the political aspect of Sterling Brown is always underrated,
Yeah.
because folks could not imagine his capacity to tap into the working class cultural, not only just by content, but by aesthetics also.
Exactly.
To me, the black bourgeoisie is real. We are, and Howard, that's where I keep saying, I want people to know, I taught there, I taught there 43 years, but I also know it's a bourgeoisie center. We want students to go be utensils of white supremacy. It's a fact.
Yeah.
Sterling is uncompromising on this.
Yeah.
To me, the personal knowledge I saw in him was he stood his ground,
Exactly.
and he felt that he doesn't have anything to portray out of this obscene bourgeois class who is whining and dining with white sponsors in Harlem, for example.
Yeah.
That's why he says, I never stopped. People said, I missed the Harlem Renaissance, but he said, I didn't go there. I took the train down and went to the peasant.
He never
class.
shook hands with
Yeah.
Carl Van Vechten. That was his claim to fame.
Yeah. So to me, he's serious, but he doesn't publicize his politics.
Exactly.
He wants you to decipher it.
Yeah.
And I think that is what I saw his problem at Howard, the rejection at Howard.
Yeah.
It's like rejecting the best, in my view, the best teacher to students who befriend students, who does not look down upon pedagogically. I'm like, you don't know, I know. He is in actual democratic debate with his students.
Yeah.
So to me, that threatens Howard. Faculties have come and told me this is disorderly for you to have students have tea in your office. They've said that in committee, etc. And that's what I learned about Sterling, was I saw something I would like to emulate. That is to keep my principal integrity without dying with a faculty that is by majority compromising their principles and academic integrity. So we should never shy, because it would be like apologizing it would sound like apology. And listen, I'm proud of you're you're dropping bombs, and I like that. And I also want people to know that he was he knows what was going on. He knew stereotype.
Yeah.
He knew literature. He knew the aesthetics of literature.
Yeah.
Breakdowns. People talk a lot about literature, but he goes into the grammar of literature.
Exactly.
And I, as a filmmaker, have benefited so much on his theory of the mockingbird theory that he has. I use that in film. I've done a paper on it. It's from him that I got. The metaphor of the mockingbird, the imitation literature in Black America. That to me is something we cannot compromise.
Exactly.
And thank you again. I mean, I'm trying to let you be. Invading your space. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking. Just to add on to what you were saying, for those of you who don't know, the mockingbird theory is that we as Black writers, some of us have been imitating what white writers do. Alain Locke is known for a lot of this, for that echoing of white academia as the standard instead of making our own. And Sterling was known for being very against that, constantly speaking out against that and against Locke as well. And I think it's important to note that the English building at Howard is named after Alain Locke and not Sterling or other professors.
It's important. My wife is always, agitating to get the business school that his grandfather's land to be named after Sterling's family. That is a very serious matter.
Yeah.
And we always give credit to, people who have never contributed. I mean, Alan Locke, okay, but Sterling Brown and that building there, that business building, that brown red brick there, he calls it red brick sitting there. To me, that is an insult to all of us who care about generational transaction information, for students to pass by a building named after and then say, who is it named after? That's the idea of monuments and edifice.
Exactly. He was proud that he never shook hands with Carl Van Vechten. So Carl Van Vechten, yes, he was essentially a white patron of the Harlem Renaissance. He heavily supported, or he heavily funded. Godfathered. Yes.
The godfather of the Harlem Renaissance.
Exactly.
He's the cherry picker of. In fact, there's many books written about this whole godmother and godfather white folks, how much they really veered that literature. That Harlem Renaissance was compromised by that power they have.
Exactly.
Mafia power.
Yes, and that's why I think like the Harlem Renaissance had such a cabaret lifestyle to it, and kind of a rejection of the working class, even though that was what Sterling was interested in, and that's why he did not want to go there. And to not be mistaken, at the time of the Harlem Renaissance, he was writing critiques for Opportunity magazine. So he was heavily critiquing, and he was writing, and he was involved with these people, and they were his friends. But he really rejected that ethic and the people that were involved.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing.
Yeah.
Did you hear what he said about the wine in the film?
No.
You should play. You should. I'm going to do it bad. Okay. He says, while the Nigarachis were drinking Van Vechtem's wine, cheap wine, I went down all the way to Virginia and had a corn liquor, which is, he said, and then he says corn liquor. He says corn liquor is some with PhD. You remember, sister? I want to play it in the film anyway. It's a powerful metaphor, but a book could be written on those things,
Yeah.
on the issue of cultural historian versus historian. That's a very powerful dichotomy. We mix it. Anybody who writes in history thinks they're doing cultural analysis. Black film is in trouble because of that. We don't know how to break down the cultural language of cinema if we want to talk about black cinema. What is a black cinema? What's the accent sound like?
Exactly.
What is the grammatical stuff? So for me, I'm passionate about this because it's in literature. I see them
Yeah.
in the way when I was at UCLA. The way he analyzed Imitation of Life, it was the first time we saw a black critic take on white folks.
Yeah.
Okay, 1934 movie, The Imitation of Life.
I can't wait for us to get more into the aesthetics and ethics of his work. But I also want to acknowledge your parents being here. If you two have anything you want to say, you can have the mic.
I know you want to get to the poetry.
This is just as important.
So hi, everybody. I'm Laura. I am Giselle's
Come over
mother,
here.
Sterling's granddaughter. I grew up with Sterling and Daisy. His wife was Daisy. Daisy was his muse. We are, as a family, I will tell you, we never speak about Sterling without speaking about Daisy, because she was so much a part of his life and really supported him to do the things that he did. You know, supported him to travel down south, to teach at Lincoln University, and you know she was his right hand person, and in some senses maintained his sanity. We could talk about that another time, but Sterling and Daisy were, you know, in our mind as a family, one and the same. We'd never think of one without the other. I grew up not only as a kid with them as a family. I had 3 sisters. Like Giselle said, there's a lot of women in our family. We spent every weekend at their house. My oldest sisters, who were twins, when my mother had them, my parents were living with Sterling and Daisy in that tiny little house with a pair of twins. So when I got older, in high school, I moved in with them. Daisy and Sterling were, you know, getting older and were ill, so I moved in to help out around the house and, you know, just kind of keep an eye on things. So we have a lot of wonderful memories, like the picture there. We learned a lot from him. Because we were there over the weekends, we saw a lot of wonderful people who, unfortunately, when I was a kid, they were just people. Yeah, right? I did not know that Nikki Giovanni was somebody really great, you know, or that Maya Angelou, who called one day and just showed up at the door, was somebody that I should have gotten her autograph. You know, these were just friends of the family. Duke Ellington, he lived next door to his sisters. Duke would come, just, you know, if he was coming through town for a show or something, and he'd come, and they had a big grand piano at the house next door, and he'd come and tinker on the piano. You know, it was the most fun thing, but I didn't know, you know, that I should have been in awe of Duke Ellington playing in our house, you know. So it was, you know, we have a lot of wonderful memories, and I'm very proud of Giselle that she's listened so well to all of the folklore that has been passed down from Sterling, you know, picked up on that and is carrying that legacy for the family. This would be the 125th year of his birth, and I think he would be unbelievable that he would find it unbelievable that people are still talking about him today, because as they said yesterday, he would say that he was a teacher and sometimes a writer. Versus the other way around. He was extremely modest, and I think that contributed to him not being as well known as, say, a Langston Hughes or some of the other writers of the era, who, you know, thanks to their patrons, promoted themselves and marketed themselves. And Sterling did not market himself like the other writers did. But he saw his legacy as influencing the writers that came behind him and encouraging and teaching them. So he had a lot of sessions like this in his basement, in his house. He probably went to some of those, where they would sit around, they would share poems. They were basically writer circles. And he would critique, he would ask everybody to critique each other's writing and, you know, help them grow, give them different perspectives, and encourage them to focus on the people, right, in terms of helping people understand the culture of their origins and represent wherever their origins were, whether it was Louisiana, Mississippi, New York. He didn't want them just to write about emotion. He wanted them to write about people and be the legacy carrying on where they came from as well. So I think that would be what he would encourage people today to do, especially with everything going on in the world today. He'd want people to continue to write about and kind of document what's happening from the perspective of the real people on the street. So I'm happy to answer any other questions about Sterling as well. Okay, one more family member.
One of the things that Giselle didn't say about the family archives is that she's actually being led by several ancestors. Laura's mom, Betty, and his son Jack left all of these books, and since Giselle actually is the only grandchild, Laura's mom left personal notes in all these books. She highlighted pages, and she said, Giselle, you need to read this. In all these books are all these notes that have kind of guided her to this point. So not only was it Sterling that left this, but Giselle's grandparents were really important in actually saving a lot of Sterling's works and archives, because without them fighting to protect them, I'm not quite sure where they would be today. But Jack and Betty, especially Betty, Giselle's grandmother, it's amazing you could go down there and there's like these little Post-its, and it'll turn to a page, and she'll write about a passage, and she said, Giselle, when you're old enough, you need to read this. So it's quite amazing.
It's like a map. She'll have something that says, read this page, and it'll say, go to this book and read the page of this book to find something connecting there. So a lot of work was done before me, which was great.
Love that. Thank you all for allowing us to be witnesses and a part of this legacy, a part of extending this legacy. I do want to get into the poem so that we can read some of his work if you haven't read his work before, and that we can actually interact with it and write our own in response. Because like you were saying, Giselle, a part of extending the legacy and being a part of the legacy is continuing as artists, as writers. We're making our own archives too, and we're contributing to the archives that already exist. So that's what I want to make sure we do today, and then share out, and then have an open mic after. Does that sound good? Awesome. All right, here on the tables, we have 2 poems. One of them is Old Lem, and one of them is Strong Men. Does anyone see a poem that is calling out to them that they would like to read aloud for us?
I could read Strong Men, I think. All right.
The title pulled out to you, didn't it?
Yeah. Strong Men by Sterling Allen Brown. They dragged you from homeland. They chained you in coffles. They huddled you spoon fashion in filthy hatches. They sold you to give a few gentlemen ease. They broke you in like oxen. They scourged you. They branded you. They made your women breeders. They swelled your numbers with bastards. They taught you the religion they disgraced. You sang, keep an inch and long. Like a po-inch worm, you sang, by and by, I'm gonna lay down this heavy load. You sang, walk to get it children. Don't you get weary. The strong men keep a coming on. The strong men get stronger. They point with pride to the roads you built for them. They ride in comfort over the rails you laid for them. They put hammers in your hands and said, drive so much before sundown. You sang, ain't no hammer in this land strikes like mine, baby, strikes like mine. They cooped you in their kitchens. They penned you in their factories. They gave you the jobs that they were too good for. They tried to guarantee happiness to themselves by shunting dirt and misery to you. You sang, me and my baby gonna shine, shine. Me and my baby gonna shine. The strong men keep a coming on. The strong men get stronger. They bought off some of your leaders. You stumbled as blind men will. They coaxed you, unwantedly soft-voiced. You followed away, then laughed as usual. They heard the laugh and wondered, uncomfortable, unadmitting a deeper terror. The strong men keep a coming on, getting stronger. What from the slums, where they have hemmed you? What from the tiny huts they could not keep from you? What reaches them, making them ill at ease, fearful? Today they shout prohibition at you. Thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that, reserved for whites only. You laugh. One thing they cannot prohibit, the strong men coming on, the strong men getting stronger, strong men stronger.
Thank you so much for reading that. I have so many thoughts and feelings about that poem, but first I want to hear if there's anything you all noticed from hearing it, from reading it, if it's in front of you. Also, if you guys are over there, feel free to take a seat and join us. Is there anything? Yeah, please.
Can I say something? Yes. So, pardon me for not sitting down. I'm a stand-up type of guy. Hearing those poems, it's like that's me. That is me, and I'm here in full expression, and full delivery and representation of everything that's entailed in what I'm hearing here. This is about me. This is about me. When I say it's about me, it's about a character, a persona, a person, a people. You know what I mean? A struggle. That's my struggle. All day, all day. So, you know, I mean, this is very interesting. This is very interesting. I'm very honored to be here, and I can't wait to get on the mic so I can also show that we have advancement and you know, continuing in the arts. You know what I'm saying? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm hearing you resonate a lot as one of the strong men getting stronger. And I feel like that's kind of the point of this poem, to empower and to show what we do in the face of oppression. We rise. We strengthen not only ourselves, but each other. That's what I hear from this poem. Does anyone have other thoughts about this piece, about what you heard, a line that stood out to you, that impacted you? I see people picking up their glasses and reading. And that was a beautiful reading. Thank you, Kanye.
Speaking this microphone. Yeah, I didn't know much about Sterling Brown. I'd heard the name, but I co-edited a book around encounters with Baldwin, and people in that wrote about how Sterling Brown had an effect on them and their work. So in terms of you saying that there's little streams going out in terms of how he has affected people and how he has encouraged and motivated people. So it is there. You don't always know it, and you may not always see it. So I will kind of get that copy of that book to look. Because I started reading, I think, oh, so this is this Sterling Brown person. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to like come to one of the Sterling Brown events, so I would get to know a little bit more about him and his work. So thank you. And I must also say, I mean, your presentation, I was just looking at you thinking, you sound like you've been doing this for years. You just dropped it so well. Thank you very much. Very, very impressed. Thank you. Yeah, you did him proud.
Thank you. Yeah, Sterling definitely prioritized being a poet's poet, a writer's writer, focusing on influencing the other artist instead of influencing just the general audience. And I think that's beautiful. I know sometimes as a poet, there's people who get on the mic and they do something and it blows my mind and inspires me, but the people in the audience who aren't poets, they don't get it. They didn't feel what we felt. And I think we need those poets. We need those writers so that we continue to write and we continue to poet, or the art will stop. So I think it's beautiful that we can be in that legacy of what it means to art for art's sake. Does anyone have, I see you got the glasses on and a poem in hand.
I was just very moved by this first part of the poem where he very vividly describes the process of disgracing the religion that they taught us. That was just striking to me. That's all I have to say. Is there a specific line here? I mean, they broke you in like oxen. They scourged you. They branded you. They made you your woman breeders. They swelled your numbers with bastards. They taught you the religion they disgraced. Really laying out that process of disgracing the religion of Christianity. I have never found that to be true. That old hymn, they will know you're Christians by your love. It's all here. Just the indictment is striking.
I love repetition in poetry. Yeah, I love repetition in poetry. If it's done well, it just carries you. And it's like, it sings to you without being a song. So the rhythm is good, the repetition is good. So I that's what has attracted me to it. So, it's like, it is one of the times when, as you read it, there's a different level of understanding and beauty. Each time you read it, you capture something else. And, oh yeah, that works for me, That's what I like about it anyway. Yeah, and then even though the words pop out to me as well, it's almost like I want the feeling of it first, the empathy of it first, and then getting into the words line by line, because each line is very strong. Each line is very strong, which I think is also important. Yeah, I'll stop talking. Sorry.
Yeah, I think also with that, like with the repetition, that's really that like blues depth to it. Also I find this poem particularly enriching because it has that work song in it, and it maintains the rhythm of the work song through the poetic kind of anaphora that he uses there, but also in the dialect and keeping the vernacular and, the ellipses, so showing that it's continuing on, from a literary standpoint. It keeps that blues rhythm, but maintains the vernacular within it. That makes it the soul of what Sterling Brown is trying to say.
Thank you. I think this is a perfect example of the importance of both ethics and aesthetics in a piece, especially in a poem. The repetition, the word choice, even the ellipses, the content and how it's presented are both equally important in getting the message across. I think the rhythm is beautiful. And the fact that he's saying in it, you sang, and it's a sing-songy piece, I think is so important. And what you were saying too about the religion, he's so entrenched in the history of it all too. He wants to tell us, where did we get these things? What did they do? And how we're responding to it. So in it, he's having this song that is also a call and response in terms of narrative. And I think that's beautiful. I saw you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I think it's a great poem. I like the subtlety of when he's describing the various forms of oppression that he's moving through time, from days of enslavement up to modern time. And I like the fact that he's, I think, a real work of art. You allow a lot of room for the audience to make it their own. And he's not, when he's describing, the theme of the strongman getting stronger, he doesn't define what exactly that means. Broadly speaking, it would mean social justice, but he's not putting too fine a point on it. And I think that's a real strength. And I also think just the subtlety, the way he also blends when he's describing the oppression, he's using kind of formal language. He's using simple vocabulary, but it's not an academic vocabulary. And yet when he gives the refrain, it's not a refrain he's making up. He's actually taking the people's words who were living it at the time. And he says, "You sang." And I think that's just breathtaking in its significance, because that's a voice that is invalidated.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a calling upon ancestors in the piece that I think is a part of what you're pointing out and so important. And in that subtlety you're speaking of, the they and the you, he doesn't explicitly define these, and I think that's also common in African American literature, because we're having to tell narratives and stories without necessarily being seen by people we don't want to be seen by. He's writing this for the artists. He's writing this for the writers, and not for people who wouldn't get it. And I think that's the beauty of subtlety. I'm going to have us move on to the next poem. Does anyone want to read Old Lem? Or even, Yes. Would you read half? I know it's 2 pages. If you two are okay with sharing these, if you two want to share that copy and you two want to share that copy, thank you. Awesome. So if you want to read 1 page, does anyone else want to read the 2nd page? Do I have a volunteer for the 2nd page? I see conversation. Yes? Awesome.
You're not gonna read? Okay. You wanna read?
I'll read the 2nd page.
Okay. Shy people up here. I talked to Old Lamb, and Old Lamb said, "They weigh the cotton, they store the cone. We only get good enough to work the rows. They run the commissary, they keep the books. We gotta be grateful for being cheated. Whippersnapper clerks call us out our name. We gotta say mister to spinning boys. They make our figures, turn somersets. We buckle in the middle, say, thank you, sir. They don't come by ones, they don't come by twos, they come by tens. They got judges, they got the lawyers, they got the jury rules, they got the laws. They don't gotta come by ones. They got the sheriffs, they got the deputies. They don't come by twos. They got the shotguns, they got the rope, they got the juice, they got the justice, they got the end, and they got to come by tens. Their fists stay closed, their eyes look straight, our hands stay open, our eyes must fall. They don't come by ones. They got the manhood, they got the courage. They don't come by twos. We gotta slink around, hang-tailed hounds. Yeah. They burn us when we dogs. They burn us when we men. They come by tens. I had a buddy, 6 foot of a man, muscled up perfect, game of the heart. They don't come by ones. Outworked and outfought, any man or 2 men, they don't come by twos. He spoke out of turn at the commissary. They gave him the time of day. They get out the county. He didn't take it. He said, come and get me. They said they came and got him. They came by tens. They stayed in the county. He lays there dead. They don't come by ones. They don't come by twos. But they come by tens.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was a beautiful reading. Does anyone have thoughts, feelings, anything they noticed? Again, I noticed a lot, but I think you guys did too.
I would say with one device, with the lines, they don't come by ones, they don't come by twos, but they come by tens throughout the entire piece. They're laced at different parts and stanzas. And as it progresses, it works in each part, in each and every form it takes place, even to the last image of the anecdote at the end of the piece. It lines in perfectly. And so I think it was very intentional and very, I think the word I'll say, very tactful of him to use that tool specifically to keep that repetition, but also see in what way where it's like, yes, this is a saying that we say. And then as you progress, you start to see, oh, that's why this is something they are trying to keep into memory as not only a saying, but as a warning, as a, hey, this is a thing that is happening. Watch out for this. So, yeah.
There is something about just the absurdity of the disproportionality of the violence throughout that he just, from the beginning, grabs onto and never lets go. Like, I feel that they don't come by ones, they come by twos, they come by tens, is to make you really think about that. Because it's something that I think, especially being in that situation, even now, us knowing about our history, we take for granted. Like, we're so used to seeing Black and brown bodies put in these positions. I love this because it reminds you, like, this is absurd. This This is nonsense. This shouldn't be. This shouldn't happen to anyone. You know, it's that assertion again and again and again. Do you see how ridiculous this is? We actually do need to pause for that, because it was happening all the time, everywhere. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to go.
So just to add to what you're saying, kind of reinforces the horror without shouting it. It's kind of, I'm just going to tell you again. I'm just going to tell you again. So it just reinforces that, and that's the kind of power of it, is that you don't need to shout it. You just need to keep letting it go there, you know. So yeah, so it's kind of the same thing. It's a subtlety. It's subtle, but it's also stark at the same time in terms of the words, because the words he used is very simple, and they're not long words, short syllabled words, so they have a lot of punch to them, and that also kind of really stands out.
I'll say too, like with that simplicity of the message, calling out the absurdity, it's important to note that this is something coming from Old Lem, coming from an ancestor, voicing this. So Sterling is voicing Old Lem's words through his words here. And it kind of speaks to the timelessness, you know, because I think this message is very pertinent to today as well, you know, like calling out the absurdity in this very kind of quiet subtlety. And hearing that it's from, you know, one ancestor to the next keeps that kind of cyclical nature of us keeping, we have to keep saying this message in order for it to be understood and heard. And
First, I want to say, okay, my name is Yahuda L. That's another thing right there. Hearing this right here, knowing who I am, and knowing that this is about me. This is about me. This is what I go through, and to hear individuals act like, oh, this is a new revelation. This is shocking. What? Is you crazy? I go through this every second, like right now. Like, I'm part of the new architects of the new world. You know what I'm saying? And I have to do it through literacy, through research, through studying, and perception and pull. It's absurd. No, that's the reality. That's the 3 dimension that we living in. That we better aim for the 5 dimension. You know what I'm saying? And right now you're probably not getting where I'm coming from, but later on it's gonna kick in. We better come together as a collective. You know what I'm saying? Because we gotta right now, if we go upon the old scriptures, the old lessons that were, they had agenda. They had agenda that came with them. You know what I'm saying? If we go by those scripts right there, we're going to remain lost. We have to keep asserting our new information, you know what I mean? And we have to assert our new boldness and our consciousness, and we have to apply. We have to activate. We have to unite, you know what I mean? We got to stop acting like this is not existing. We can kill the divide, because you know what the divide is? 99% us on the bottom and that 1% on top. If we want to keep on going like that, we're going to keep ignoring these topics right here. We can't ignore these topics. We need to have open conversations about this. It's speaking like thunder and lightning to me over there. I was trying to contain myself. I was like, this is me every second, from when I'm talking right now to when I walk up out of here. You know what I'm saying? We got to stick together. Yeah, this is a start right here. It's like a root of it. You know what I'm saying? We plant the seeds. Let's put some water on it. Let it grow. I don't want to speak too much, but this hits me like all the way in my pineal gland, my crown chakra, all the way. And it's a solution to this. All that absurdity that he was talking about, believe it or not, the combat to that is we reverse it. We turn hate into love. I got solutions. I'm gonna be having a forum soon. We turn hate into love. Oh, it's gonna be a beautiful competition. Watch. I mean, shalom.
Thank you. I think that speaks to the timelessness of the piece, that we're still able to relate to it so strongly now. I know when I first heard that piece, they don't come by ones, they don't come by twos, they come by tens. I went outside and I'm seeing the National Guard. I'm seeing they come by tens. I'll be like, oh, I see 1, 2, 3. Around the block, 6 more. And it's like, you realize that he's talking about, police state, which is enslavement. If we keep going, there's very much a timelessness, a calling upon ancestors when you talk about Old Lem that I think is beautiful and seen in all of his work. And I think I resonate with this being like a seed that is planted, and that honestly we can keep growing and growing and growing. I also think I want to point out a little bit of how these two pieces relate to each other, that I feel like you kind of touched upon. What is the response to what they do? What are you doing? I feel like in Strong Men, he's kind of responding a little bit to Old Lem. We get stronger, we get stronger, we get stronger. And I think I'm actually, does anyone have anything else they would like to say about Old Lem? About anything they observed, thought? Then we're going to move on, I think, into writing and into a workshop activity. If you have your own pen, your own notebook, this is a great time to bring those out. If not, feel free to write on your phones. But my idea for this workshop comes from both the Strong Men and from Old Lem. This idea of what they did and what are you going to do about it. Strong Men and Old Lem both emphasize what they did. They dragged you from homeland, they chained you in coffles, and they huddled you spoon fashion in filthy hatches. And in Strong Men, interspersed throughout is you sang. But for me, Strong Men is very much talking about what they did. And it ends on how we respond. Old Lem, on the other hand, sorry if I'm going to check this copy out. Old Lem, on the other hand, also talks about what they did, but it's much more of a call and response of they stir the corn, we only good enough to work the rows. They do this, we do this. They do this, we do this. They do this, we do this. For the workshop, I would like you to pick one of these poems to kind of frame your writing, with Strong Men talking about what they did and how you'll respond, and ending on that response. They did this, they did this, they did this. Strong Men, getting stronger, whatever that is for you. If you pick Old Lem, maybe picking an ancestor, and what are they saying to you about what they're going through? They did this to them, they did this, and what do we do? So for Old Lem, picking an ancestor and asking them a question, listening to what they say about what they've been going through, their struggle. And for Strong Men, what are you going to do about what they're doing to us? So please take out a pen, take out a pencil, take out a phone, got Notes app. What time is it? Okay. I think we're going to write for about 10 minutes and see where we're at, and then maybe we'll add on another 5. And then I'd love to do a share out and hear what we've all written. Does that sound good? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
So the poem that I wrote, I kind of sort of wrote it for my great granddad. I wrote it in his voice from a conversation that I had with him earlier on in high school, where he was telling me about what it was like growing up in Oklahoma, because I'm born and raised California. My mom born and raised California. My grandma born and raised California. My great grandfather, him and his folks, they're from Oklahoma, and they moved out to California in like the 50s. And so this was an instance where he was telling me about growing up in Oklahoma. My papa dad tells me about Oklahoma after Old Lem. We grew up in the 30s. We didn't have much, but we had plenty. We had a farm, so we had our own food. We, all us kids, helped with the animals. We had to. We had to eat. We used to go out to the forest and hunt. We'd go shooting, looking for our dinner. We'd eat things like pheasant and possum. We didn't care for everything everybody else was looking for. We were just trying to survive, to live life. A brother of mine wanted to be a teacher. A sister wanted to go to beauty school. Somebody else a doctor. And they all laughed at me for wanting to be a farmer. It's what I knew, how to plow and cultivate. I've always done it. That was the only dream I had.
Thank you. Two more people, if you want to share some of what you wrote, all of what you wrote.
This is a poem essentially about 3 generations of my family. So this is coming from the strong man. What did my dad do in the wake of his father's lynching? So their story, my story, our story. Where is my body? They'll never say. My chili carrot, invisible, all of that pain. But never my obedience. They never took it. I never taught it. They carry the pain. The disobedience, the intelligence, the ambition, the curiosity. That's what I left you. They left you pain. Rage, defiance, dreams, acquisition, ambition, scars, pain. You hid it from yours, invisible as my body. Creation, curiosity, laughing. Swimming in waters where you only stood. Chocolate monster, down by the creek. And the water where you never dare set your feet. Chocolate. Laughter, eating chocolate. There's no monsters here, Daddy. Chitlin houses, ruining the chocolate. Chocolate, mocha, a coffee house date. A prince born she thought she could never make.
Would one more person like to share? No? Okay. Would you like to share?
It's a little random. Move. A hard push to her shoulder, sloped under sacks. Move. Slipping onto the edge of the pallet, shared with nudges from many. Move. Pepper spray shrouds eyes, feet slipping. Move. You tired? I spell you, mister. Move. This block of mansions, our schools now. Silk top hats.
Thank you. I love how all 3 of you used the repetition, used the they versus you, and really brought us back. I feel like I heard Sterling Brown's influence in all of your pieces. Thank you so much. We're going to hear now a poem by Sterling in his voice. The poem is After Winter.
We felt we need to close it with his. with a poetry that's biographical, and it's also that everybody invokes. And I don't want to even say anything about the poetry itself because I feel illegitimate. I only know I feel for it. I could not say this is how I feel, etc. It's a very, very to me very emotionally powerful biography. In one, how many sentences? There's a whole book of growing up and a family lineage and all that. That to me is the most powerful summary. And let's hear him read it himself.
Yes. It's a beautiful, extremely autobiographical poem speaking about his life. Again, I don't want to spoil much. It seems like we are getting it up. So while they get the audio up, I'll share what I wrote for this workshop. I didn't get to write a lot, but I went after Old Lem and spoke to an ancestor. I talked to Grandma Mary, and Mary said, "I always been great. Calluses and church hats high, brim wide, they've been begging on my door, ashing my knees into ache, floorboards scuffed. The day my daughter permed her hair for the first time, I smelled the singed roots for weeks, weary and wonderful. Walked into every room on heels and buttoned to the top, took what's mine, what's mine, what's mine." That's where I got. Thank you. I'm going with the audio. I think they're still pulling it up. Would anyone else like to share one of the pieces they did from the workshop? Trying to hold on to the open mic. In response to Sterling Allen Brown's piece? Okay. We're going to wait because we have the open mic later. So we're going to do the open mic later. But for now, we're still focusing on Sterling Allen Brown. I don't want to move on. I don't want to move on because I've heard this poem. I've watched the film After Winter. Ooh, lights off. And it was a beautiful telling of his life, of him as a teacher, as a poet. And I think it says a lot about the poem that the film is titled after it, After Winter. And now we are ready to listen to it.
Importance of history. In the 60s, that is not so. They thought everything started with them. When I started teaching in the 20s, my students were angry. But my students could not have gone and sat down in any store in Lynchburg. It's not that they would have had cigarettes burned in their ears. They'd been lynched. They point with pride to the roads you built for them. They ride in comfort over the rails you laid for them. They put hammers in your hands and said, "Drive so much before sundown." You sang, "Ain't no hammer in this land. Strikes like mine, baby. Strikes like mine." Nevertheless, what you're going to do is, I think your generation will do this, is be prepared, be productive. Never forget where you came from. They cooked you in their kitchens, they penned you in the factories, they gave you the jobs that they were too good for. They tried to guarantee happiness to themselves by shunting dirt and misery to you. You sang, "Me and my baby gonna shine, shine, me and my baby gonna shine. Strong men keep a coming on, the men get stronger." But you do not believe in fruitless, angry protest. You're going to change it, but you're going to change it so that it sticks. They bought off some of your leaders. You stumbled as blind men will. They coaxed you unwontedly soft-voiced. You followed away, then laughed as usual. They heard the laugh and wondered, uncomfortable, unadmitting a deeper terror. The strong men keep coming on, getting stronger. I believe in your generation, and this is not apple polishing or peach polishing. I am not being grateful to you for this undue honor.
Five minutes. I'm wondering if we should start transitioning to the open mic and then come back to this. Yes, maybe yes. I think that might work. Okay. So I think we'll try to do the open mic really quickly. Try to get at least one person on the mic before we can get back to that. On deck right now, we have Kanye Marcellus. Let me adjust. Thank you for the lights. We have Yahuda L. Would you like to do a poem?
Saying I could do it all, so I thought I could do a poem, maybe and some music too. What's up?
I would love for you to do a poem right now, and then if you want to do a song later, then we can do that. Awesome.
Might go, no check. Hold up. Malcolm X is a brother, no doubt I look up to. Those who didn't read his book, then fuck you. This black man not only paid the price, but as a rebel on the streets in jail changed his life. How many people do you know can say that? Not kissing up to no one's ass and remain black. Back in the days when life was even rougher, Malcolm didn't fold, he stood up and got tougher. His father was a reverend, he would never win. The family got hungry, he went peddling. Mom just struggling hard on her own for the clan. Killed the husband, was left all alone. Father had life insurance, but the whites had screwed her. Said he committed suicide and didn't give it to her. Had to feed the kids, signed up for welfare. The check was hardly nothing and barely made it there. Years later, when Malcolm was getting older, he found his sister Ella and leaned on the shoulder. Now the story starts as I get to my main point. Malcolm left his hometown and moved to Detroit. Took it light for the week to learn the area. Life in Detroit has seemed much scarier. Met a brother named Shorty who had position, showed him the ropes, was an undercover musician. Shorty showed him everything there was to know. Why he should carry a pistol and how to pimp a hoe. Don't get me wrong, he wasn't a pimp or nothing. In fact, he kept a job and that was saying something. On the strive to stay alive and make it ends meet. Brother Malcolm worked hard to put was on his feet. Went to bars and clubs, hear the music, started meeting musicians and dancing because he would choose it. Later on, he started smoking reefer, which led to a habit, but felt it's much cheaper. Years later, started committing crimes, burglaries, and robberies. Now he's doing time. Went to court, got sentenced to a dub, had to do 10 years, but hung in like a glove. While in jail, he did a lot of reading, speaking better vocabulary and achieving. Even tried to explain to the black man. He tried to explain, but brothers didn't understand. Our people came real far, but it's not over yet. Prove to yourself how far you can get. This is the end of the story I so proudly flex. Be proud there was a man named Malcolm X. Word up.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. On deck, which means after the next person, we have Nubia Kai. But coming up to the stage, please give a warm welcome to Kanye Marsalis. Round of applause.
How y'all doing? Alrighty. For a minute, I was like, what am I gonna do? But I'll do this other poem that I wrote up while we did the workshop. So this is Invincible Women After Strong Men. So this is a poem I wrote for the women in my family. They abused your heart, confused your love for weakness, and called you slave, called you willing womb and no muscle, called you glass, fragile and in danger. In their hands they said you were nothing without them and that is woman, but you refused, rebelled. You didn't stay in a crumbling house just because it was all you knew. You chose bravery. You chose to love yourself. That you're no good, dead, rotted inside and out. You chose yourself. The sweet song of breath flowing in and out your lungs. You did not give in to what they deemed destiny. You stayed in your body, carried your children out the fire all by yourself, and no one even asked you. No one taught you how to believe in yourself, that your life is yours to share or not to enjoy. No one taught you how to believe in yourself. You learned all on your own, and you ran and never stopped running. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Our next poet is Nubia Kai.
Thank you, and thank you, Hailey, for having this wonderful program, this three-part series on this great poet. I would like to say that those two poems that we did are some of my favorite poems. And Sterling Brown, Langston Hughes, Paul Laurence Dunbar are some of my favorite poets. I decided to do a poem. I was thinking of doing something on politics because he was a political poet, very relevant. But I decided to do something on love because he was also a race man and a lover of his people. And also because I wrote this poem maybe about 6 years ago after seeing the film, and I had seen it a number of times. Many of you may remember Love Jones, all right, with Nia Long and Lorenz Tate, and the poetry that you saw in Love Jones. Remember at the end of the story, she does a poem called I Am Remembering Love. So I was inspired to write something, even though it was 50 years back. I remember love. And this was again for my ex-husband, my baby daddy, who died just last month. And this is like the 40th day of his ascension. That's another reason I wanted to do this poem. I remember love. It was July, 2 years after the rage against racism turned to fire, raised a city to ashes, ashes that gave birth to orchards, that set free the phoenix into the hemispheres and replenished the soil of a barren land to bloom revolutionary flowers that were the minds of the masses, the ideal of the moment pressed in petals of stone. We met at the bus stop, coming and going in different directions of illegality, breathing while black. I liberated the book on the science of breath. You, as far from a criminal as a saint, visited your parole officer for the crime of throwing grass on the sidewalk. You were put in a net of countless fish. You lose your name for a number, but gain a flower's compassion, bringing in a drowning butterfly for mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. I think I loved you then because you loved the butterfly, gave her your breath so that she could breathe, and left me breathless with admiration. We met at the bus stop, where time stopped in a mutual gaze of recognition, carved from the same birch tree, cast in the same lost wax mold of an Nkisi mass, the yin-yang of a coconut to heal a feeble heart. It is stronger now, reinforced with fish gut and hawthorn berries, melded at last with the twin souls conceived at creation. We met. We recollected something unspeakable while our bodies talked, turned into magnets that never separated, that we knew as one soul born again at the bus stop, at the heart stop of a seagull's flight, standing sandal foot on the concrete. Before the hashish feast grazed my doorstep, we searched for the same gourd plant, played drums on its buttocks, danced Tai Chi around the flame of fallen lovers, resurrected in the phoenix ashes of completion. You and me, baby, light as maple leaves, waving goodbye to loneliness, happy as blue jays splashing in worm-filled bird baths, and serene as the full moon satiated and sleeping on the night sky. We see our reflection in the moon's mirror. It is not a man in the moon, but a man and woman in love that cannot stop gazing at each other. Their eyes are locked in wonderment at the universe living inside a pupil, the sun spinning around the earth after all, galaxies colliding like ecstatic firecrackers. No, I don't want to return to the earthly plane of ordinary beings. Take me with you to the world of shapeshifters, where I am star and sun and seed, where I am sweetgrass and lotus and honeybee, spreading the nectar of life from my dripping lips, sweeter than candy apples because they have touched yours. Suck the nectar from your mouth, dreaming or wake, in the moon's reflection of passion, in the sun's compulsory orbit around Venus, positioned in prominence, a nucleus of timid planets, all of them wanting to dance with you, wanting to carry me across the threshold of my unexpected dreams, to be impregnated, to be with child forever in my spirit's dome, to be born again in the unabashed innocence of swaddling clothes, only this time with the wisdom of Aesop, the parable of the Persea tree that grew out of the fertilizing tears of a grieving woman. I wept for you before I knew your name or your face. I pined for you a few blocks from your house before I knew you lived there. You were my fantasy bird whose back I climbed, and we flew away to Kangaba, drummed an open path through an impervious forest, through spears and invisible lions, painted murals on an idyllic world in our own image. A few blocks from your house, I walked 10 feet above the ground, years before your image appeared on the canvas of my heart. I knew you were there, knew your longing in the palm of my hand. In your hand was a plan, an unpredictable pattern orchestrated in the cosmos, landing on a hilltop of marigolds, safe and secure. We make our nest in the belly of the beast, but have immunity to its toxic waste, wasting away in torrential rains of love, rains that envelops the nest in sheafs of rainbows, parting the portals of heaven. I have seen the holy light that transfigured the earth, towering above your head, you, the artist's perfect model of Christ. I have seen the mountaintop the king spoke of in the mountainous cave of your arms. It is a photograph now, in the Museum of Black Antiquities, a place I visit when I remember love, when I remember the sights and sounds of a razed city, desolate as an abandoned heart.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I mean, I feel like you raised the bar for love poems for me. Like if it's not like that, I don't want it. I don't want it. That was beautiful. No. I know we're running low on time. Is the audio ready? No? Okay.
Unfortunately, technology is. Huh?
I'm working on it, so.
We can't wait till Saturday.
No, Saturday.
Well, while we see if we can try to get it, I'll make some announcements on behalf of Sankofa. I'm going to stand here. On May 16th in the afternoon, Sankofa Video and Books will be in collaboration with Positive Black Folks in Action and Baba Peter Bailey presenting Honoring Malcolm X Part 1. So just as we're doing Honoring Sterling Allen Brown, Malcolm X is next. On May 19th, 6:30 to 8:30, Sankofa Video and Books will be in collaboration with Howard University professor and editor at the Washington Informer, Sam Collins, who's going to present Malcolm X, From Black Nationalism to Pan-Africanism. On May 22nd, Dr. Greg Carr hosts Part 3, the finale of Honoring Malcolm X. So definitely keep coming to Sankofa if you want to keep learning. I'm sure they have things about Malcolm X that I've never heard of, because that's the type of place Sankofa is and the type of people that they're going to bring here. The audio might be up. I know we had a performer who wanted to do a song. We cannot do song audio right now because of the technical issues, but if you are open to doing it a cappella, yeah? Wait, 1 second, sorry.
There's a rule here at Sankofa. It's a family-friendly rule. No cursing, no vulgarity is allowed.
Okay. If your piece is...
Check this out. All that censoring, the truth is not censored. The truth is the truth. When you scared the truth, you scared the truth.
That's understandable.
You know what I mean? If you want the cuffs back on, okay.
Thank you. So we will not be doing another piece. We appreciate you. Thank you for your poem on Malcolm X. It was beautiful. I'm sorry that we have to change the rules, and we appreciate you.
Because it's my voltage in here. It's funny. It's funny because it seems like it's supposed to be about moving on and about coming together and unifying and actually innovating and being better in what started. But that's not what it is, because I'm what they call the so-called black. I'm the only one in here that they call the so-called black. I ain't somebody I come from. I'm not African.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. We appreciate you. We appreciated your art tonight, and we're going to have to move on. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope you come back to Sankofa. I hope you come back to hear the poem. I think...
I would love to read After Winter, if you have the book or if you have the poem. Yes, who has it? Okay. I'll just tell you a little bit about the tradition of After Winter. So it is the story of Sterling's family. They had a farm in Laurel, Maryland. They lived here in Brookland on 12th and Kearny Street. The family had purchased a very large plot. Brookland, just so you know, was kind of a traditional, it was one of the original black neighborhoods in D.C. It was all farmland, and it gave blacks, middle-class blacks, the opportunity to buy land and build. It was very close to Howard University, so it kind of became a center of the Howard University residential culture. A lot of the professors and scholars from Howard bought and built property there. So the family property that they have, you can even go to 12th and Kearny and you can see the house. It has a historical plaque. There are two houses there. If you're facing the houses, the one on the left is his parents and his sisters. He had 5 sisters. It's a larger house. And then the one on the right is a smaller house that Daisy and Sterling lived in together. And they did everything together. They had shared driveways, a shared backyard, everything. Before they built that house, and they lived in Howard University campus, his father, who, as you heard, was born a slave, and he considered himself a farmer as well. And he, he had other family members who were sharecroppers. So they purchased this farm property in Laurel, Maryland, and they would go up there over the summer and farm and bring food back home for the winter. So it was very much a black tradition and a black way of life in terms of fending for themselves. So Sterling had a lot of great memories. My dad went there a lot. We have pictures of my dad and Sterling's father on the farm. So when Sterling wrote this poem, it was truly about life on the farm, and he extended it. As they said earlier, you could really read a lot into this because the story extends beyond just his family, but it is about his family experience. It's tradition. This poem was read at Sterling's funeral. Giselle, when she was 6 years old, read this at my father's funeral. So it's really a very poignant poem and very personal poem for our family. And so I'm old enough I have to put on glasses now. So this is called After Winter by Sterling A. Brown. He snuggles his fingers in the blacker loam. The lean months are done with, the fat to come. His eyes are set on a brushwood fire, but his heart is soaring higher and higher. Though he stands ragged, an old scarecrow, this is the way his swift thoughts go. Butter beans for Clara, sugar corn for Grace, and for the little fella, running space. Radishes and lettuce, eggplants and beets, turnips for the winter, and candied sweets. Homespun tobacco, apples in the bin, for smoking and for cider when the folk straps in. He thinks with the winter his troubles are gone, 10 acres unplanted to raise dreams on. The lean months are done with, the fat to come. His hopes, winter wanderers, hasten home. Butter beans for Clara, sugar corn for Grace, and for the little fella, running space. And by the way, Clara and Grace were two of his sisters. The other sisters were very jealous that he didn't put their names in the poem. So that was a little family controversy, too.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think that was a perfect way to close out the night. Thank you. Thank you to Giselle. Thank you to the family. Thank you to Sankofa. Thank you for all coming here and being willing to listen, learn, and share and write your own pieces. I think we're going to close out. It's 10 p.m. Sankofa has to go home, so we all have to go home, too. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
I also want to thank you. This is the deep sister here. I'm serious. No, seriously. I was very impressed on the depth of your knowledge on the Harlem Renaissance itself. And Alan Lockett said, not many young people even know his name, although they go to the building. And when I asked them, say, who is it named after? So you're a special case. Thank you, sister. And thank you, Giselle, for everything you did. We're going to do more. You put yourself available now, so don't try to hide from us. Thank you again. Thank you, family. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll do better. You can see it or let other people know. It's on YouTube already, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody.